My marriage wasn't perfect, but I always figured we had something solid. Name's Nick Ryder, 42 years old, and I manage IT projects for a mid-sized consulting firm in Milwaukee. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps Jessica happy with her designer handbags and weekend spa trips. Jessica's my wife of 8 years. 39, works in social media marketing, and spends most of her free time with her circle of friends who think they're living in some reality show. I used to find it amusing. Used to. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday in October. I'd been planning to surprise Jessica for her birthday next week, had saved up 3 months for this ridiculously expensive diamond necklace she'd been hinting about. The kind of hint that involved leaving browser windows open on her laptop and circling items in jewelry catalogs. "Dave, I'm heading out early today," I told my coworker as I packed up my laptop. "Got a surprise for the missus." Dave Martinez looked up from his monitor, grinning. "Let me guess. More jewelry to impress the country club crowd?" "Something like that." I grabbed my keys, feeling pretty good about myself. The necklace was sitting in a velvet box in my glove compartment, and I'd even picked up her favorite wine on the way to work. The drive home took 20 minutes through suburban streets lined with modest houses and well-maintained lawns. Our place wasn't anything special. A 2-story colonial with blue shutters that Jessica had insisted on painting last spring. But it was ours, and I'd worked my tail off to make the mortgage payments every month. I pulled into the driveway and noticed Greg Mather's black BMW parked across the street. Greg was Jessica's best friend from college, the kind of guy who never had to work a real day in his life thanks to his trust fund. Tall, perfectly styled hair, and the kind of smile that made you want to check your wallet afterward. Jessica always insisted he was just a friend, but something about the way she lit up when he called always rubbed me wrong. The front door was locked, which struck me as odd since Jessica usually left it open when she had company. I fished out my keys and was about to unlock it when I heard laughter coming from the kitchen window around the side of the house. I don't know what made me walk over there instead of going straight inside. Maybe it was the particular quality of that laughter. Intimate, breathless. Maybe it was the way my gut suddenly felt like it was full of concrete. The kitchen window faced our backyard, and Jessica never bothered with curtains because she said the neighbors couldn't see in anyway. She was wrong about that. What I saw through that window made my world tilt sideways. Jessica was sitting on our kitchen table, her legs wrapped around Greg's waist, kissing him like her life depended on it. Her hands were tangled in his hair, and his were roaming places that definitely weren't appropriate for just friends. The same table where we ate breakfast every morning. The same table where she'd lectured me about leaving coffee rings on the wood. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, watching my wife of 8 years destroy everything we'd built together. Part of me wanted to storm inside and confront them. Part of me wanted to turn around and pretend I'd never seen it. But mostly, I just felt this strange, cold clarity settling over me like fog. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove away. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next few hours passed in a blur. I found myself at a coffee shop downtown, staring at my phone and trying to process what I'd witnessed. The hurt was there, sure, but underneath it was something sharper. Something that felt like anger crystallizing into purpose. By the time I got home that evening, Greg's car was gone. Jessica was in the living room, curled up on the couch watching some reality show about housewives. She looked up when I walked in, all innocent smiles. "Hey, honey, how was work?" "Fine." I set down my briefcase and studied her face. No guilt, no nervousness. Just the same practiced smile she'd been giving me for months. "Greg stopped by today?" "Oh, yeah. He dropped off some photos from his trip to Italy. You know how he loves to show off." She laughed, but it sounded forced now that I knew what to listen for. "We should plan a trip like that someday." "Sure, someday." I went upstairs and sat on our bed, looking around the room we'd shared for so long. Everything looked different now. The framed photos of our wedding day, the books on her nightstand, even the way she'd arranged her perfume bottles on the dresser. It all felt like props in some elaborate theater production. That night, while Jessica slept beside me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the wronged husband who begged and pleaded and tried to save a marriage that was already over. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I was going to make sure she understood exactly what she'd thrown away. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the bank. Our joint accounts held about $40,000, money I'd been saving for a down payment on the bigger house Jessica kept talking about, money that was about to disappear. "I'd like to transfer these funds to my personal account," I told the teller, sliding the paperwork across the counter. "Of course, Mr. Ryder, this might take a few minutes to process." While I waited, I made a mental inventory of everything valuable in our house. Jessica's jewelry was mostly gifts from me. The electronics, the furniture, even her car, all purchased with money I'd earned. She'd contributed her social media income, but that barely covered her shopping habits. By noon, I'd moved everything I could legally claim. The joint accounts were empty, transferred to an account Jessica didn't have access to. I'd also made appointments with a divorce attorney and a locksmith. Then I went home and waited. Jessica walked in around 5:30, chattering about her day as she kicked off her heels. "You won't believe what happened at work today. This client wanted us to—" She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open. "What's wrong? You look serious." I turned the laptop screen toward her. It showed our bank account balance, $0.00. "Nick, what is this? Where's our money?" "My money," I corrected, "and it's somewhere safe." Her face went through several expressions, confusion, then understanding, then something that might have been panic. "What are you talking about? That's our joint account." "Was our joint account. Things change." I closed the laptop and stood up. "Just like marriages change, just like people change. I don't understand what you're—" "Greg's a good kisser, isn't he?" The color drained from her face. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. Then her expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. "How long have you known? Does it matter? What matters is what happens next." "Nick, listen. It's not what you think. Greg and I, we're just— Save it." I picked up a manila envelope from the table and handed it to her. "Divorce papers. I've already signed them. You can keep the house for now, but you'll need to refinance the mortgage in your name only. You have 60 days. She tore open the envelope with shaking hands, scanning the documents. "You can't do this. Half of everything is mine." "Half of what? The house you can't afford? The car that's in my name? The furniture I paid for?" I shrugged. "You're welcome to half of our debt, though. I'm feeling generous." "This is insane. We can work through this. Couples therapy or—" "Jessica." My voice was calm, which seemed to scare her more than if I'd been yelling. "I saw you, on our kitchen table, with your tongue down Greg's throat and his hands all over you. There's nothing to work through." She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched her face transform. The mask of the loving wife slipped away, replaced by something calculating and cold. "Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play." That's when I knew the real war was about to begin. I should have expected Jessica to fight back, but I underestimated just how dirty she was willing to get. The first shot came the next morning before I'd even finished my coffee. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Dude, what the heck is going on? Lisa just showed me some crazy stuff about you online." I opened Facebook to find that Jessica had posted a long, emotional status update about her heartbreak over discovering my affair with a coworker. According to her version of events, I'd been sneaking around for months, spending money on another woman, and had now abandoned my loving wife for some secretary at my office. The post had already gotten dozens of comments from her friends, all expressing sympathy and outrage on her behalf. Several people I knew had shared it, adding their own commentary about what a terrible person I was. My phone rang. Dave again. Nick, please tell me this is some kind of mistake. It's a mistake, all right, but not mine. I scrolled through more comments, watching my reputation get shredded in real time. Jessica's rewriting history to make herself look like the victim. So you didn't cheat? Dave, you've worked with me for 6 years. Have I ever so much as looked at another woman? Have I ever mentioned being unhappy with Jessica? No, but... She's the one who was cheating. I caught her with Greg Mathers yesterday afternoon. This is her way of getting ahead of the story. There was a long pause. Man, this is messed up. What are you going to do? I'm going to let her dig her own grave. But first, I had to deal with the immediate damage. By the time I got to work, half the office was giving me suspicious looks. Mrs. Kaplan, my boss, called me into her office before I'd even sat down at my desk. Nick, we need to talk. Mrs. Kaplan was in her 50s, tough as nails, and had built her career in tech when it was even more of a boys' club than it is now. She didn't tolerate drama, and she especially didn't tolerate anything that might reflect poorly on the company. I assume this is about the social media situation, I said, closing her office door behind me. It is. I've had 3 calls this morning from clients who saw that post. They're concerned about having someone with personal issues managing their projects. The post is complete fiction, Mrs. Kaplan. My wife was having an affair, I filed for divorce, and now she's trying to control the narrative. Can you prove that? I thought about the scene I'd witnessed through the kitchen window. Not in a way that would hold up in court. It's my word against hers. Then we have a problem. I can't have this kind of distraction affecting the team. I'm going to need you to take some personal time while this gets sorted out. You're suspending me? I'm giving you space to handle your personal situation, with pay, for now. But Nick? She leaned forward, her expression serious. Get this resolved quickly. I can't protect you indefinitely. I spent the rest of the day fielding calls and messages from friends and family who'd seen Jessica's post. Some believed her story. Others were skeptical but didn't want to get involved. A few, like my sister Amy, offered support, but couldn't do much to help with the public relations nightmare Jessica had created. By evening, I was furious. Not just hurt, furious. Jessica had taken my attempt at a clean, quiet divorce and turned it into a public humiliation campaign. She'd attacked my reputation, my job, and my relationships with people I cared about. Time to remind her that 2 could play this game. I started by documenting everything. Screenshots of her social media posts, records of our financial accounts, emails, and text messages that might be relevant to the divorce proceedings. Then I did something Jessica probably hadn't expected. I started investigating. Jessica thought she was clever, but she'd gotten sloppy. Her phone was still linked to our shared iCloud account, which meant I could see her messages and photos. What I found there made my stomach turn. Messages with Greg going back 6 months. Photos they'd taken together during what I'd thought were girls' trips with her friends. Hotel receipts charged to credit cards I'd been paying off. Even worse, there were conversations about me, mocking my appearance, my job, my boring personality. But the most interesting discovery was a message thread between Jessica and her sister Amy about selling some jewelry to fund the Italy trip. My grandmother's engagement ring, which I'd given to Jessica on our 5th anniversary, had apparently been pawned 3 weeks ago. That ring was worth more than the necklace I'd bought for her birthday. It was also the one thing I'd specifically asked her to never sell, because of its sentimental value. I sat back in my chair, staring at the evidence on my screen. Jessica hadn't just cheated on me. She'd been systematically betraying me for months while I worked overtime to pay for her lifestyle. The hurt was still there, but it was being rapidly replaced by something colder and more focused. Jessica wanted a war? Fine. But she'd just given me the ammunition I needed to win it. I spent the next hour crafting my response. Not an angry Facebook rant that would make me look desperate. Something smarter. I created a simple blog post on a platform Jessica and her friends frequented, titled, "When Someone You Trust Rewrites History." I didn't mention Jessica by name, but I laid out a timeline of recent events from my perspective. The mysterious girls' trips that turned out to include male companions, the missing family heirloom, the discovery of an affair, the immediate social media campaign designed to preemptively discredit the wronged party. I included screenshots of some of the evidence, carefully edited to protect privacy but clear enough to tell the story. Hotel receipts, pawnshop records, messages discussing the sale of Nick's grandmother's ring. Then I shared the link with a simple message. Sometimes the truth needs more than 280 characters. Within an hour, the post had been viewed dozens of times. Within 2 hours, Jessica was calling me. "You bastard, take that down right now." "Good evening to you too, Jessica. How was your day?" "I'm serious, Nick. That's private information. You can't just—" "Actually, I can. Those are my financial records, my grandmother's ring, and my reputation you've been dragging through the mud. I'm just providing some context. Nobody's going to believe your side of this." "We'll see. By the way, you might want to call Greg. I think some of his friends have started asking questions about those Italy photos." The line went quiet for a moment. When Jessica spoke again, her voice was different. Harder. "You have no idea what you've just started." "Actually, I think I do. You started it yesterday with your little Facebook performance. I'm just making sure the audience gets the whole show." She hung up, but I knew this was far from over. Jessica had spent years cultivating her image as the perfect wife and social media influencer. Having that image challenged publicly would be more painful to her than losing our marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Just saw your blog post. Holy crap, man. Are you sure you want to escalate this?" I typed back, "She escalated it first. I'm just making sure everyone knows the real score." But even as I sent the message, I wondered if I was making a mistake. The old Nick would have taken the high road, filed for divorce quietly, and tried to move on with his life. The new Nick, the one who'd been forged in the last 48 hours of betrayal and humiliation, had different ideas about justice, and I was just getting started. The next few days taught me something important about modern warfare. It's not fought with weapons or fists, but with information and social networks. Jessica had fired the first shot, but I was better equipped for a long campaign. My background in IT project management had given me skills Jessica didn't appreciate: patience, attention to detail, and the ability to systematically work through complex problems. She was used to getting her way through charm and manipulation. I preferred data and strategy. While she was busy managing the fallout from my blog post, I was quietly building my case. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Amy, Jessica's younger sister, called me on Thursday morning. "Nick, we need to talk." Amy was different from Jessica. More honest, less concerned with appearances. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital and had always seemed uncomfortable with Jessica's social climbing tendencies. "What's on your mind, Amy?" "I saw what Jessica posted about you, and I saw your response." She paused. "There are things you don't know, things I probably should have told you a long time ago." We met for coffee at a place downtown, away from Jessica's usual haunts. Amy looked nervous, constantly glancing around like she expected her sister to appear. "Jessica's done this before," she said without preamble. "The cheating, I mean, and the lying about it afterward." "What do you mean?" "Remember her last boyfriend before you? Michael?" I did remember. Jessica had told me that Michael was controlling and emotionally abusive, which was why she'd left him. It was one of the reasons I'd been so careful to give her space and independence in our relationship. She cheated on him too, with multiple guys. When he found out and confronted her, she told everyone he was stalking her, destroyed his reputation so thoroughly that he ended up moving to another state. My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Because I hoped she'd changed. Because you seemed to make her happy, at least at first. And because... She looked down at her hands. Because Jessica can be vindictive when people cross her. I've seen what she does to people who get in her way. Like what? Amy told me about Jessica's pattern of behavior over the years. How she'd sabotaged a friend's business because of a perceived slight. How she'd spread rumors about a coworker who'd gotten a promotion Jessica wanted. How she'd manipulated situations to make herself look like the victim while destroying anyone who challenged her. The thing is, she's good at it. Really good. She knows how to play the victim, how to get people on her side, how to make her enemies look like the bad guys. So what are you saying? That I should just give up? No. I'm saying you need to be smarter than she is, and you need to be prepared for her to escalate. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a Facebook post. I opened it to find that Jessica had shared a screenshot of my blog post with a new comment. This is what emotional abuse looks like. My husband is now stalking me online and sharing private information to humiliate me. I'm scared of what he might do next. She's good, Amy said, reading over my shoulder. Look at how she's framing it. Now you're not just a cheater, you're an abuser and a stalker. I scrolled through the comments, watching my reputation take another hit. Several people were suggesting Jessica get a restraining order. Others were calling me a psychopath. This is insane. Everything in that post was true. Truth doesn't matter if people don't believe it. Jessica understands that. She's not trying to win a debate, she's trying to destroy you socially. Amy was right. While I'd been focused on presenting facts and evidence, Jessica was playing a different game entirely. She was appealing to emotions, positioning herself as a victim, and making me look like a dangerous stalker. What would you do? I asked. Fight fire with fire, but be smarter about it. That afternoon, I started phase 2 of my research. If Jessica wanted to play the victim, I needed to understand exactly who I was dealing with. Amy had given me some leads, but I needed more. I started with public records, Jessica's previous addresses, employment history, court filings. Then I moved to social media archaeology, old posts, tagged photos, comments on friends' pages that might reveal patterns of behavior. What I found was illuminating. Jessica had a history of dramatic relationship endings, always with herself as the wronged party. She'd accused multiple ex-boyfriends of various forms of misconduct. She'd been involved in several workplace conflicts that had ended with her leaving under mysterious circumstances. Most interesting was a small claims court case from 2 years before we met. A former roommate had sued her for theft and property damage. Jessica had countersued for harassment. Both cases had been dismissed, but the filings told an interesting story about Jessica's character. I also discovered that Greg's involvement in our marriage went back further than I'd realized. There were photos of them together at events I didn't remember Jessica mentioning. Check-ins at restaurants and hotels during times when Jessica had told me she was with her girlfriends. But the real goldmine was Jessica's email account. She'd never changed the password from the one I'd helped her set up years ago, and she'd been sloppy about security. What I found there painted a picture of systematic deception that went far beyond simple adultery. Messages with Greg about handling Nick when I became suspicious. Conversations with friends about how to manage me during the divorce. Plans to claim I was abusive or unstable if I tried to fight back. There was even a message thread about hiding assets, jewelry and cash that Jessica had been secretly accumulating in preparation for leaving me. The most damning evidence was a conversation with a friend about her long-term strategy. The key is to make him look like the bad guy from the start. If people think he's abusive, they won't question my side of the story. By the time he tries to defend himself, it'll be too late. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't a marriage that had gone bad. This was a calculated campaign of manipulation and theft, with me as the unwitting target. Jessica had been planning this for months, maybe longer. She'd been setting me up to be the villain in her story while she played the role of the innocent victim. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. I spent the rest of the evening organizing everything I'd discovered: financial records, social media evidence, email threads, public documents. I created a timeline that showed Jessica's pattern of deception and manipulation. Then I started planning my next move. Jessica thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. Time to show her that I'd been studying the board a lot more carefully than she realized. My phone rang around 11 p.m. Jessica again. "I know what you're doing, Nick." "Really? What am I doing?" "Digging through my private information, stalking me online, building some kind of case against me." "I'm protecting myself. You declared war, remember? I'm just making sure I have adequate intelligence. This needs to stop. We can settle this like adults." "We could have settled this like adults if you hadn't cheated on me and then tried to destroy my reputation. That ship has sailed." "Fine. But you should know, I'm not the only one with secrets. Keep pushing, and you might not like what comes out." The threat was clear, but I wasn't intimidated. Jessica was used to people backing down when she applied pressure. But I'd already lost everything that mattered to me. What else could she take? "Bring it on," I said, and hung up. I was about to find out just how far Jessica was willing to go. Friday morning brought Jessica's next attack, and it was more sophisticated than I'd expected. Instead of another emotional social media post, she'd gone straight to the source of my livelihood. Mrs. Kaplan called me at 8 a.m. "Nick, we need to meet. Now." I drove to the office with a growing sense of dread. When I arrived, Mrs. Kaplan was waiting with HR Director Janet Mills and a man I didn't recognize in an expensive suit. "This is Attorney Robert Chen," Mrs. Kaplan said. "He's representing the company in a matter that's come to our attention." Chen opened a folder and slid several documents across the table. "Mr. Ryder, we've received allegations that you've been using company resources to stalk and harass your estranged wife. We've also been informed that you may have accessed private information illegally." I scanned the documents. Jessica had filed a formal complaint claiming that I'd hacked into her email and social media accounts using company computers. She'd provided screenshots of my blog post as evidence of my harassment campaign and suggested that my employer should be held liable for providing me with the tools to commit these crimes. "This is ridiculous," I said. "I haven't used company resources for anything personal, and I haven't hacked into anything. Jessica never changed passwords that I already knew." "Nevertheless," Chen continued, "the company has to take these allegations seriously. We're conducting a full investigation of your computer usage and network access logs." Mrs. Kaplan looked uncomfortable. "Nick, I'm going to have to suspend you pending the outcome of this investigation. With pay for now, but that could change depending on what we find." I felt my carefully constructed plan starting to crumble. Jessica had found my weak point, my job, and attacked it directly. Without my income, I'd have no resources to fight her in court. "How long will this investigation take?" "Could be weeks," Chen said. "We have to be thorough." I left the office feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Jessica had outmaneuvered me, using the legal system to tie my hands while she continued her campaign. But as I drove home, my initial panic gave way to cold analysis. Jessica's latest move was clever, but it had also revealed something important. She was scared. People don't escalate to legal threats unless they feel cornered. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Heard about the suspension. This is getting crazy, man." I called him back. "Dave, I need a favor. Can you meet me for lunch?" We met at a diner across town, away from anyone who might know us. Dave looked worried. "Nick, people are starting to talk. Some folks think Jessica's telling the truth about you being unstable." "What do you think?" "I think you're handling this whole situation like a project manager. Methodical, systematic, maybe a little obsessed with the details." He paused. "But I also think Jessica's playing a different game than you are." "What do you mean?" She's not trying to prove she's right. She's trying to make you look wrong. There's a difference. Dave was right. I'd been focused on gathering evidence and building a logical case. Jessica was focused on destroying my credibility so that evidence wouldn't matter. I need to change tactics, I said. Or you could just walk away, take whatever settlement you can get, and start over somewhere else. I considered it for about 10 seconds. The old Nick might have taken that advice. But the old Nick hadn't watched his wife betray him and then systematically try to destroy his life. No. She wants to play hardball? Fine. But I'm not going down without a fight. That afternoon, I put my new strategy into motion. Instead of trying to prove Jessica was wrong, I was going to let her prove it herself. I started by creating a fake email account and reaching out to some of Jessica's friends, pretending to be a journalist working on a story about social media and relationship drama. I asked innocent questions about Jessica's situation and whether they'd seen similar cases. The responses were illuminating. Several people mentioned that they'd been surprised by Jessica's allegations because I'd always seemed like such a nice guy. Others admitted they'd had their own suspicions about Jessica's relationship with Greg. More importantly, a few people revealed details about Jessica's behavior that contradicted her victim narrative. One friend mentioned seeing Jessica and Greg together at a restaurant months ago, which didn't match Jessica's timeline of when the affair supposedly started. Next, I reached out to Michael, Jessica's ex-boyfriend. Amy had given me his contact information, and he was surprisingly willing to talk. "I've been following the drama on social media," he said when I called. "Looks familiar." Michael's story was almost identical to mine. He discovered Jessica's infidelity, confronted her about it, and found himself the target of a campaign to destroy his reputation. The main difference was that he'd had less evidence and fewer resources to fight back. "She's good at playing the victim," he said. "Really good. But she's also predictable. She'll keep escalating until she either wins or destroys herself." "What do you mean?" "Jessica can't help herself. When she feels threatened, she doubles down. She'll keep making bigger and bigger claims until eventually she goes too far and people stop believing her." That evening, I got a chance to test Michael's theory. Jessica called me, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she sounded genuinely angry rather than calculatedly emotional. "You've been talking to people about me, asking questions." "People have been asking me questions. I'm just answering them honestly." "I know you contacted Michael. That's harassment, Nick. I could have you arrested." "For calling your ex-boyfriend? I don't think that's how harassment laws work." "You're trying to build some kind of case against me. It won't work." "I'm not building anything, Jessica. I'm just letting people see who you really are." There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. "You want to see who I really am? Fine. But remember, you asked for this." She hung up, and I knew I'd crossed some kind of line. Jessica was done playing defense. Whatever came next was going to be her full offensive. I spent the rest of the evening preparing for war. I backed up all my evidence to multiple locations, changed all my passwords, and set up security cameras around my apartment. If Jessica was planning something big, I wanted to be ready. My phone buzzed with a text from Amy. "Jessica's been asking weird questions about you. Be careful." I texted back, "What kind of questions?" "About your mental health, whether you've ever been violent, whether I think you might hurt someone." My stomach dropped. Jessica wasn't just trying to destroy my reputation anymore. She was setting up a narrative that would justify having me arrested or committed. I realized I was in more danger than I'd thought. This wasn't just about divorce or money anymore. Jessica was trying to eliminate me as a threat permanently. Time to remind her that I wasn't as helpless as she thought. Saturday morning, I woke up to find my car vandalized. Someone had keyed deep scratches into the paint and slashed 2 tires. There was also a note under the windshipper: "Stop harassing Jessica, or this gets worse." I called the police, but they weren't much help. The officer who responded was polite, but clearly skeptical of my story. Any idea who might have done this? I'm going through a divorce. Things have gotten contentious. Your wife do this? I doubt she did it personally, but she has friends who might. The officer made some notes, but I could tell he wasn't taking it seriously. Just another domestic dispute in his eyes. After he left, I examined the damage more carefully. The scratches were too precise to be random vandalism. Someone had taken their time, making sure to hit every panel. The note was printed in block letters, obviously disguised handwriting. But whoever did this had made a mistake. My building had security cameras, and I'd installed my own additional camera after Jessica's threat. I had the whole thing on video. The footage showed two men I didn't recognize, working quickly but methodically to damage my car. They were careful to keep their faces turned away from the obvious security cameras, but they hadn't noticed my hidden camera. I had clear shots of both faces. A reverse image search and some social media detective work revealed their identities. Tom Bradley and Steve Walsh, both friends of Greg's from his college fraternity. Both had criminal records for minor offenses. I now had proof that Jessica and Greg were escalating to actual crimes. But more importantly, I had leverage. Instead of going to the police immediately, I decided to use this information strategically. I made copies of the video and stored them securely, then started planning my response. First, I needed to deal with the immediate threat to my reputation. Jessica's campaign was working. I could see it in how people looked at me, how conversations stopped when I entered a room. I needed to shift the narrative. I created a new blog post, this time focusing not on Jessica's infidelity, but on the pattern of escalation. I described the vandalism, included screenshots of the threatening note, and posed a simple question. What kind of person responds to a divorce filing with criminal behavior? I didn't accuse Jessica directly, but I let readers draw their own conclusions. I also mentioned that I'd turned the evidence over to police and that an investigation was underway. The post got more attention than my previous one. People began questioning Jessica's victim narrative when faced with evidence of actual criminal behavior, but Jessica's response was swift and brutal. Sunday morning, I got a call from my sister Amy, not Jessica's sister, but my own sister who lived across the country. Nick, what the hell is going on? I just got a call from someone claiming to be Jessica's lawyer. What did they want? They said you've been threatening Jessica and her family. They wanted to know if I thought you were capable of violence, if you'd ever shown signs of mental illness, if I knew where you might have hidden weapons. My hands started shaking. Jessica was now actively trying to build a case that I was dangerous, reaching out to my own family to gather ammunition. Amy, none of that's true. Jessica's the one who's been... I know, Nick. I told them to go to hell, but this is scary stuff. What if they call Mom and Dad? I spent the next hour calling family members, warning them that Jessica might contact them with false allegations. Most were supportive, but I could hear the worry in their voices. Even if they didn't believe Jessica's claims, the fact that she was making them was disturbing. That afternoon, things got worse. I received a certified letter from an attorney I'd never heard of, informing me that I was being sued for harassment, stalking, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The letter demanded that I cease all contact with Jessica, remove all social media posts about her, and pay damages of $50,000. I called my own lawyer, but he wasn't available until Monday. I was on my own for the weekend, and Jessica knew it. Sunday evening, she made her final move. I was at home, trying to figure out my next step, when there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 police officers. Mr. Ryder, we need to speak with you. I opened the door, my heart racing. What's this about? We've received a report that you've been threatening your estranged wife. We need to ask you some questions. They came inside, and I could see them looking around my apartment, taking note of everything. One officer was asking questions while the other was clearly searching for anything that might be considered threatening or dangerous. Have you had any contact with Jessica Ryder in the past week? She's called me several times. I haven't initiated any contact. Have you made any threats against her or her family? Absolutely not. What about online? Any posts or messages that might be interpreted as threatening? I explained about the blog posts, emphasizing that they were responses to Jessica's public accusations and contained only factual information. The officers took notes, but seemed skeptical. Mr. Ryder, your wife seems genuinely afraid of you. She's provided us with evidence of what she considers stalking behavior. Officer, I'm the one who's been victimized here. Someone vandalized my car yesterday. I have it on video. I showed them the footage and their attitude shifted slightly. The evidence of actual criminal behavior seemed to surprise them. Why didn't you report this yesterday? I did. Officer Martinez took a report. They made more notes, but I could tell they were caught between two conflicting narratives. Jessica's claims that I was dangerous, and my evidence that someone was targeting me. After they left, I sat in my apartment feeling like the walls were closing in. Jessica had successfully painted me as a potential threat, which meant any move I made would be viewed with suspicion. She'd also tied up my resources with legal threats and job suspension. But as I reviewed everything that had happened, I realized Jessica had made several critical errors. She'd escalated to criminal behavior, which could be proven. She'd involved third parties who might not be as loyal as she thought. And most importantly, she'd revealed the extent of her deception, which contradicted her victim narrative. I spent Sunday night planning my counter-offensive. Jessica thought she'd cornered me, but she'd actually given me the tools I needed to destroy her credibility permanently. Monday morning, I was going to show her what a real campaign looked like. The gloves were finally coming off. Monday morning, I met with my lawyer, David Kim, and laid out everything I'd discovered. The evidence of Jessica's affair, her financial deceptions, the pattern of false accusations against ex-boyfriends, and the recent escalation to criminal behavior. Kim whistled low as he reviewed the documents. This is extensive. You've been busy. Jessica's been painting me as an unstable stalker. I need to flip that narrative. The vandalism video is good. Having Greg's friends on camera committing crimes at his girlfriend's behest, that's going to be hard for them to explain. What about the harassment lawsuit? Frivolous. Everything you posted was factual and relevant to your divorce case. She's trying to intimidate you into silence, but it won't hold up in court. Kim helped me file countersuits for adultery, theft of the family heirloom, and conspiracy to commit vandalism. We also requested a restraining order against Jessica based on the escalating pattern of harassment and criminal behavior. But I wasn't done with legal remedies. I had something more immediate in mind. That afternoon, I attended the monthly meeting of the Riverside Community Association. Jessica was a board member and took great pride in her role as a neighborhood leader. She'd often mentioned how much she enjoyed the respect and influence that came with the position. I arrived early and took a seat in the back. When Jessica walked in, she froze when she saw me, but quickly recovered and took her usual place at the board table. The meeting proceeded normally until the public comment period. I stood up and walked to the microphone. I'd like to address some recent events that may affect the community. Jessica's face went pale, but she couldn't stop me without looking suspicious. As many of you know, I'm going through a divorce. What you might not know is that my wife has been conducting an affair with a local businessman, and that affair has now escalated to criminal behavior. I played the vandalism video on my laptop, projecting it onto the wall screen. The footage clearly showed the two men damaging my car while I narrated the timeline of events. These men are associates of my wife's boyfriend. This happened in our neighborhood, in the parking lot of my building. I'm sharing this because I want everyone to be aware that we have people willing to commit crimes to intimidate residents. The room was silent. Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear. I've turned this evidence over to police, and I expect arrests to be made soon. I just wanted the community to know that if you see suspicious activity around my building, it's probably related to my divorce case. I sat down, and the room erupted in whispered conversations. Jessica tried to maintain her composure, but I could see her hands shaking. After the meeting, several neighbors approached me with support and questions. Jessica left quickly without speaking to anyone. But my real target wasn't the community association. It was Greg's business reputation. Greg owned a boutique marketing firm that catered to upscale local businesses. His success depended heavily on his image as a trustworthy, sophisticated professional. Having his associates caught on camera committing crimes wouldn't be good for business. I researched Greg's client list and identified his biggest accounts. Then I created a professional-looking email from a fake account and sent it to the decision-makers at those companies. The email was simple and factual. You may want to be aware that Greg Mathers, owner of Mathers Marketing, is currently under police investigation for conspiracy to commit vandalism. 2 of his associates were caught on security camera damaging property in what appears to be an intimidation campaign related to Mr. Mathers' affair with a married woman. I thought you should know, as this reflects on the judgment and character of anyone you do business with. I included a link to the video footage and copies of the police report. Within hours, Greg was fielding calls from concerned clients. By evening, 2 major accounts had suspended their contracts pending the outcome of the police investigation. Jessica called me that night, furious. "You're destroying innocent people now. Greg had nothing to do with what happened to your car." "Really? His fraternity brothers just decided to vandalize my property for fun?" "You can't prove Greg told them to do anything." "I don't have to. I just have to prove they're his associates and that the timing is suspicious. His clients can draw their own conclusions." "This has to stop, Nick. We can settle this quietly. I'll admit to the affair, we'll split everything 50-50, and we'll both move on." "Too late for that. You declared war when you tried to destroy my reputation and get me fired. Now you get to live with the consequences." "I'm warning you." "No, Jessica, I'm warning you. Every move you make against me, I'll make 2 against you. Every lie you tell, I'll expose with facts. Every crime you commit or inspire, I'll document and publicize." She hung up, but I knew the message had been received. The next few days brought rapid developments. Tom Bradley and Steve Walsh were arrested for vandalism after I provided the video evidence to police. Both men immediately implicated Greg as the person who'd asked them to send a message to Jessica's husband. Greg was arrested for conspiracy and released on bail, but the damage to his reputation was severe. 3 more clients canceled their contracts, and his business was effectively finished. Jessica's lawsuit against me was dismissed when my lawyer presented evidence of her systematic campaign of false accusations. The judge was particularly unimpressed with her attempt to claim harassment while simultaneously coordinating criminal behavior against me. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. Michael, Jessica's ex-boyfriend, had been following the drama and decided to go public with his own story. He created a detailed blog post about his relationship with Jessica, documenting the same pattern of manipulation, false accusations, and reputation destruction that I'd experienced. His post included screenshots of messages from Jessica's friends admitting they'd helped spread lies about him. It also included testimony from mutual acquaintances who'd witnessed Jessica's infidelity and subsequent cover-up campaign. The post went viral locally, shared hundreds of times across social media. People began connecting the dots between Michael's experience and my current situation. Jessica's credibility collapsed overnight. By Friday, Jessica was completely isolated. Her friends had distanced themselves, her community association position was under review, and her social media following had turned against her. Even Greg was avoiding her, too focused on trying to save his business to provide support. She made one final attempt to regain control, showing up at my apartment building and causing a scene in the lobby, demanding to speak with me. Building security had to escort her out, and the incident was captured on multiple cameras. That video, showing Jessica screaming accusations while being removed by security, became the final nail in the coffin of her victim narrative. She looked exactly like what she was, an unstable person lashing out because her manipulation campaign had failed. Saturday morning, Jessica's lawyer called mine to discuss settlement terms. She was ready to accept whatever I was willing to offer. I wasn't feeling generous. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Jessica got nothing except her personal belongings and the responsibility for debts she'd incurred during her affair. I kept the house, the savings, and my reputation. Greg's business never recovered. He eventually moved to another city, his trust fund depleted by legal fees and failed attempts to rebuild his client base. Jessica moved in with her sister Amy temporarily, then disappeared from social media entirely. I heard she'd left town, but I didn't care enough to investigate. As I sat in my house now, reviewing the final divorce papers, I reflected on what I'd learned. Jessica had been right about one thing. I wasn't the same person I'd been when this started. The old Nick would have been devastated by betrayal, would have tried to save his marriage, would have taken whatever settlement he could get, and tried to move on quietly. The new Nick had learned that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit back harder than they hit you. That truth is more powerful than lies, but only if you're willing to fight for it. That people will believe whatever story is told most convincingly, so you'd better make sure you're the one telling it. I'd won, but victory felt different than I'd expected. Not triumphant exactly, more like balanced. Jessica had tried to destroy me, and I'd destroyed her instead. The scales were even. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Drinks tonight? I think you've earned it." I looked around my quiet house, thought about my restored reputation and my intact savings account, and typed back, "Sure, I've got something to celebrate." For the first time in months, that was actually true.